Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of Ferris Makes Emulators. And this is called Sweep and Mod 2 because last week I wanted to do the sweep and mod and got super distracted by that stupid timer. let me share with you a little bit of notes on why I think that's so stupid. Daniel Collin, good to see you again. Crickpot, how's it going? So last week we spent basically 2 hours, in addition to the few hours that I had spent the weekend before, and in addition to, like half an hour to an hour. Okay, a couple hours after that, after the stream. Working on the timer and kind of tweaking the interval and tweaking the implementation a little bit to try and get those audio samples in Galactic Pinball to play the correct rate. And then, guess what I did? I tested Vertical Force for the first time in a while and found out that that game was playing way too fast. And guess what fixed it? As it turns out, that timer interval is apparently correct. It is supposed to be 20 microseconds like the datasheet says. Good. Which means all of that work was wrong. But sometimes when you're making emulators, you kind of have to punt on some things and try some things out. And that's what we did. And we took all that time to find out that that was wrong. Avoid00, nice, your meeting got pushed back. Finally, you can watch the first half instead of the second half of the stream. Nice. So anyway, the timer at least has the correct intervals. However, now all the samples still play way too slowly. Now, I did some thinking about this, and I'm thinking that the reason why that is going slower is... hey, how's it going, Jay Westfall? So I think the reason why that's going slower is because I think what happens when that sample playback happens, again, I still haven't disassembled any code because I've been doing a lot of other things that I'll go over in a second. But I think what's happening is it's like it's waiting for a couple timer ticks. I don't know how many because I don't know what the sample rate's going to end up being. And then after those couple of timer ticks, it's going to handle the timer interrupt. Now, the time in which it's handling that interrupt, I'm thinking is actually significant. So the time the CPU just spends working on updating the audio sample, playing it with the hardware, until it will start up the timer again, and then, bump the mic, until it starts up the timer again, and then we start pumping out samples. I think the time that takes to happen is actually significant, and the fact that the CPU is not cycle accurate kind of puts a damper on us trying to get the timer absolutely correct until we at least know that that's better. So a couple things that have been happening this last week. First of all, Jay Westfall, who's in the chat now, has been doing a lot of work on actually working on the CPU and getting it cycle accurate. So there's a lot of digging around that we have to do because there's a lot of information that we don't actually have about how that works. Like we have, of course, cycle counts for all the CPU instructions. However, we're missing a lot of information, particularly about the pipeline structure and how a lot of those things actually work. Through digging through some other data sheets, it looks like we're finding stuff out. But I don't want to say too much about it until we've kind of made more progress on that and actually merged it into the master branch. Anyway, that's really awesome to see that happening, and hopefully we'll get some of that figured out. I did some tests, and there was actually one game that I found where the current changes that he's already done have actually helped. In particular, I'll be going over a little bit of that game as well because I also did some bug hunting there that I want to share. So that was really cool. It looks like that's going to help. Just need to back and forth on that a bit more. And yeah, so that'll be really cool. John Hunter 9, how's it going? So the timer's wrong. CPU is moving forward. Really great stuff. I was pretty busy also producing a website this week. So I made a little RustralBoy site. This is rustralboy.com, which is pretty rad. It's pretty basic, just basically a landing page, talks about the project status. Basically, there's nothing in here that wasn't already in the README, except for, if you click the source here, you'll get to the GitHub. Contribute, you'll get to the contributing doc, which I rearranged a bit. And then the releases. So this was another big thing I did this last week. Was I went through all like the Travis and AppVeyor config stuff. I found something called Trust, which is a really good example for how to actually get this stuff building. with Rust in particular. It supports a huge list of platforms that a lot of the libraries that we're using currently don't support. So this is just pretty much the two different x86 architectures for Windows back in Linux for now, but that's cool. So you're able to, go ahead and download those. However, there's still like no UI for the emulator. It's basically it takes the thing on, it takes the ROM file on the command line. That's about it right now. Speaking of which, a bunch of people joined the Discord, which is really cool. Again, you can get to that from the front page or the README here. A bunch of people have been joining that, have been chatting in there, which is really cool. It's fun to, just talk about more of this emulator stuff off the stream as well. So that's cool. If you guys are interested, join us there. Should be open. So that's rad. What else happened this last week? Try later. First time I'm able to watch this live. Got an exam tomorrow, so I might not watch the whole thing live. Yeah, no worries. I'll have it uploaded tomorrow evening. I started uploading that at a specific time, by the way, which ends up being 18 o'clock CET is when I upload that. And for some reason, it just does way better in terms of not getting swallowed in Reddit when I do that. And it seems to be, it's also a good time for me as well, because it's like right after work on Friday, and then I just let it upload overnight. So that's pretty cool. Lord Jonil, how's it going? Move 000. Oh, Ferris, any thoughts on 1.15 release today? Stable custom derive. Woo. Oh, nice. Is custom derive, is that where you're doing, like you have a type that's not in your crate and then a trait that's not in your crate, and then you're able to actually implement that? Or I don't actually know what the feature is, because I actually missed that. I read a bunch of the stuff in This Week in Rust this week, but I totally missed that. Trailer first pronunciation was right. Cool. Oh, by the way, I also did a bunch of research into libretro. Now, for those of you guys unfamiliar with libretro, let me pull up their little website here. This is libretro.com. Bloop. I'll paste this in the chat. I'll paste the Russell Boy site in the chat as well. Whoops. Window management, still hard. There we go. So libretro is basically an interface, like an API surface that you can implement, and then so basically you have front ends which expect different cores that are used for like games or emulation or whatever. Particularly, emulators are a possible use case and why it's relevant here. But you'd have these front ends that were able to load these cores and then provide the cores with various things like all the audio abstractions they would need, all the input abstractions they would need, everything like that. So it's basically they're trying to collect a bunch of cores, to give a better end user experience for a lot of these other things. In particular, they have something called RetroArch, which is a really good front end for this stuff. They also have something called Laka, I believe it's called. Looks pretty finished to me, which is basically an OS that just runs this stuff, which is really cool. The reason I bring this up is I'm really interested in, if one of you guys is interested in having someone actually implement the libretro API for this emulator. I looked at the API surface and it looks like it's super doable. I'm willing to help out in any way I can. I just really want to focus on the emulation myself, at least until I finish the audio stuff and until the bitstring stuff. Hopefully I don't step on Jay Westfall's toes too much with the bitstring stuff if I implement that pretty soon, but I don't think it'll make too much of a difference at this point. So UC says, yes, Laka is a type of berry. Cool. Finnish is a really cool language. It is nuts, though. So what else happened? Yeah, so I want to talk about the bug that I debugged. So let me actually, really quick, just find the commit where I fixed this. And I want to show you what the bug looks like. Basically, the bug is in a game called Virtual Bowling. And Virtual Bowling and Vertical Force and Galactic Pinball and a couple others, Space Invaders, a bunch of those games started working when I implemented, they didn't work until I implemented floating point instructions. And when I implemented those, I had a bunch of crazy bugs. Some of them were pretty obvious. Some of them were less obvious. And like a lot of times there would be stuff in the games that would go the wrong direction, or like it would just stop every so often, or seem to have issues with like round tripping to integers and back. So there were these bugs in Virtual Bowling that I thought was one of those, because Vertical Force still has a couple bugs, Space Invader still has a couple bugs. Still don't know what those are yet. But I just thought, okay, I'll look at that later, get some more features, and then come back. Kind of just bouncing back and forth like that. However, one second. Man, where is that commit? Ah, here it is. One second. There we go. Oh, wait. Yeah, there we go. So basically what the bug is, let me show you. And then I'll show you how I fix it, because it was actually really interesting. Or fairly interesting. By the way, guys, let me know if my system audio doesn't work. Forgot to check that before I started streaming. I didn't forget to start recording, though, so that's nice. So this is the intro of the game. Seems kind of normal, but the timing's a bit off, and you get these little pauses. As well as the sound seems to be a little weird. Right? John Hunter 9 says, we have sound. Yeah, started getting that to work a few weeks ago. Now it's actually working pretty well. Here's the thing, though. That was actually kind of wrong, like those little stalls and everything. And I thought that would have been something weird with the FPU or something, because I just didn't know what it was, and that's at least when this stuff started working. But this weekend when I was sitting there, I went and looked through the FPU code, and I did actually find a couple subtle things that I fixed on a branch, because it didn't actually seem to affect basically how any of the games I tested ran. But it did seem to be correct. I don't even remember what it was. I think it was something to do with a couple of the details. Oh yeah, now I remember. If an add or subtract, a floating point add or subtract actually ends up being -0, it actually gets rounded to 0. Like it's a really obscure thing, and I thought, well, I'll try that, see if it works, because that would affect the flags in a couple cases. So I implemented that, but I ended up just stuffing it on a branch because, again, it didn't seem to affect anything. It didn't fix these issues. But while I was testing it, I noticed something that I didn't notice back when I implemented the floating point stuff, and that is because we actually have sound, you'll notice that whenever those pauses happen, they actually correlate with little glitches in the audio. So I'll point them out to you. Hold on. There, see that? That stuff? Watch the ball. Right there. And you'll get this little squeak here. Right there, right? Isn't that weird? So I started thinking like, okay, well, what would actually cause it to make sound when it's doing that? And then I remembered back when implementing the timer initially, again, this stupid timer, I had initially written the wrong logic to have the timer interrupt be acknowledged. And so what would happen is that the timer would fire, the timer interrupt would fire, it would be handled by the CPU. But then when the CPU returned from that handler, it never acknowledged the timer interrupt properly, and that line would just be held high. So as soon as it left that interrupt, the interrupt would trigger again. And so it would just get stuck in this handling the interrupt routine, like just constantly, and just get stuck that way. And I thought, okay, if that were to have occurred again, that would explain the pauses, right? But then I thought, well, okay, what would it be? Why would it be triggering those every so often? And I went and I found, just really quick, I looked up a long play on YouTube for this game, and I noticed that there were a couple other things that were going wrong. In particular, there were like extra sound effects in that part of the intro that weren't in this emulator. I thought, man, that's kind of weird. But then it actually kind of hit me. So talking about like the galactic pinball stuff we've been seeing, the game uses the timer with the small interval to basically output all the samples one by one to the audio hardware. And if you think about it, if it started playing a sample and then got stuck in that update loop, it would just shoot out all the audio samples really, really quickly, rather than actually waiting properly between samples to get a sample. And if you think about it, that actually explains basically everything, because then what would happen is you get the sample playing way too fast, in most cases just ending up sounding like static or a little squeak or something. And you would also get the game pausing while it's sitting there playing the whole sample. And then it would resume again when the sample finished. So it actually all started to make sense. So I went ahead and I pulled up the text scroll. So I'll pull up over here. And if we look at the timer, I can't remember where that is in this document off the top of my head. Search timer. And I'll zoom in as well. Emulators is having issues with the internet. I actually bumped up my stream settings recently, and I don't think I have transcoding. Like, there's nothing I'm doing that's transcoding, but I may have adjusted some settings to allow that. I'm not really sure. I don't know, unfortunately. Okay, where was this timer? Okay, the timer. So in particular, there's one thing that's really interesting here. Setting clear timer 0 status to 1 resets the timer 0 status bit and acknowledges timer 0 interrupts. The timer 0 interrupt handler must first set enable timer 0 interrupt to 0, then set the clear timer 0 to 1 in order to acknowledge the interrupt. Now I'll show you what that looks like in our code. In particular, where is the timer? Here we go. So again, I reverted the commit that fixed this, so this is the code beforehand. And what they're talking about there is when you write the control register, there's a bit here. Like a couple things happen. So when the timer ticks, if the enable timer 0 interrupt is 1, so we have enabled interrupts and we're waiting for the timer to tick, the timer will reach 0, and then this timer 0 status will become 1, and it will stay 1 basically until you actually write to it. And then the interrupt will fire. And then what you're supposed to do to acknowledge the interrupt in the interrupt handler is you're supposed to disable the interrupt and then clear this bit in particular. And you usually do that with 2 writes. You do the first write to disable the interrupt, and then you do the second one to clear this bit. Or actually write one to this bit here to actually clear it. Now, so what I found though was that basically every other game doesn't actually disable the interrupt, or sorry, they don't actually clear the 0 status, they just disable the interrupt. And that ends up also like, so what I originally thought when I was reading these documentation is that this wouldn't actually work unless you disabled the timer interrupts just based on this language. So you'd have to disable this and then write to this, and then that's how you would acknowledge the interrupt. So the only condition that I wrote was if this was written, then you would disable that timer 0 status and you would disable the interrupt. However, I found most games would just disable the interrupt and then expect it to be disabled. Or they would disable the trigger that allows interrupts to happen and then expect the actual interrupt that was triggered to also disable. And that ended up making a bunch of other games work. So I ended up implementing it that way. However, it turns out that both cases are actually correct. So most games will just disable the timer interrupt. This game apparently doesn't actually disable the interrupt, but it does write to this clear timer 0 status bit. And so what we have to do then is actually really simple. I'll just undo reverting that commit so you can kind of see the difference. So this is what it looks like when it's actually fixed. As you can see, these are like the only 4 or 5 lines that actually, is something, oh no, that was just on my screen. These are the only few lines that were actually affected. So now we check the interrupt enable here, and we also check if we want to clear the 0 status. And if basically the interrupt was not enabled or the 0 status was, 0 status was false. So basically if either of these were the case, we would disable the interrupt. And that's it. So that actually fixed the timer. So now when I play this, we will notice that it's a lot more correct. So now it sounds like there's like a cheap bowling ball sound. And we've basically gotten rid of the pauses. The timing still seems a bit off in some things. And oh look, that little squeak was a voice, right? So this is still not entirely correct. It's the samples still play too slowly, the same way that the Galactic Pinball samples play too slowly. In fact, I'll play that as well to show you how much slower it is now that I set the timer interval to the correct rate, and that we haven't fixed the CPU stuff yet.
Welcome to Space World. Let's go.
Very noticeably slower. So that's kind of a bummer, but that's all right for now. Anyway, so that was a bug that I fixed this weekend. Ended up being pretty simple. So that was really cool. I was pretty happy about that. That bumped up. So one of the other things I did on the repo is I made a table for the compatibility of the emulator. And I'll pull that up really quick and show you kind of the metric that I decided on. So this is the whole table. This is basically all of the games that were released. And I have it organized by, there's games over here, USA column, and then a JP column. And this is because most games were released, or a lot of games at least, were released in both regions. And then there's like various notes. So what I have here is that each of these games in each of these cells here will list their compatibility. If it's blank, they're not compatible. And then the reason is explained here. So for example, 3D Tetris uses bit string ops. That may be a bit small for you guys. I'll zoom in. If it says NA, it's because the game like wasn't released in that region. Bound high is an exception because this was actually the ROM is both in this case. So I just put NA here to not count it twice. P is playable, which means like to my knowledge or to our knowledge, this game should be completely playable, but there's some bugs that we know about. So for example, Galactic Pinball has these vocal samples that don't play at the correct rate. And then F is fully playable. So to our knowledge, this is completely compatible. And what I do is I basically just tally all those up. I think there's 34 cells and we're at like 24 that are either fully compatible or playable. I count both right now because in the context of an emulator, that's typically what you want. And that puts us at about 71%. It was 68% before fixing this bug. So that was kind of cool to actually have a number actually go up. Anyway, I really want to maximize this in the next little bit. And I think that bit string ops is kind of the biggest win. But while we've been doing all this audio stuff, I want to finish that up really quick first because we're on like the last two features. So that's pretty cool. By the way, I'm seeing a lot of stuff in the chat about a couple of you guys are having stream problems. I'm really sorry about that. If there's anything I need to do, let me know. I'm just going to read through these really quick. I did actually bump up my my bitrate a couple weeks ago, but it wasn't higher than it's ever been. Like back when I was streaming on the Mac, I was doing I think 35 kbps, and then I was doing 25 more recently. But 1 or 2 weeks ago, I bumped it up to 35, remembering that I could actually do that. I don't think that's what's causing the issues here, just because I did that a couple weeks ago, and I haven't heard anything from the guys that are having issues until now. So yeah, if that was the case, sorry about that, but I don't think it is. And yeah, if there's anything I can do to help, let me know. Colin, is the string ops some CPU instructions or a separate thing in the hardware? Trilater says, if I recall correctly, that's CPU instructions. Yeah, that's a separate set of CPU instructions. Like, yeah, it's just a separate group of instructions, but they're all really related, and they look a bit weird. So I've just been holding off on them just because I didn't. Yeah, probably just do them all at once one weekend. But that's as far as I know, other than a few random instructions that none of the games ever use. Like there's a couple to dump the cache and restore the cache. There's one for interlocking when you have multiple CPUs. A couple of those instructions I just haven't bothered with because we haven't actually hit them in any cases. That's the kind of stuff that would be really cool. If anyone wants to take a look and just take a stab at sort of implementing those, they are described in the data sheets. I'm just kind of prioritizing other things over those right now. So we don't seem to need them right now. We would want those kind of things for like really hammering down on accuracy, but I think it's which is why I just had like I'm not gonna just put a to do in there. I'd rather just not support them, just to kind of mark that like this is work in progress. We'll get to that later, rather than oh yeah this works and then forget about it. So that should be fine. Jay Westfall just says he mostly has the cache control word, I believe that is done, which is really cool. Happy to hear that. John Hunter 9, will you support homebrew? Is there VB homebrew? Yes, there is a lot of VB homebrew actually. There seems to be a lot of games. As far as I know, a lot of the games that I've tested work. I tested Blocks, I tested Tron, I think it was called Faceball, and I tested Blocks 2, and I think maybe Blocks 2 had issues. I can't remember. Anyway, the emulator basically already supports homebrew. It's just that I'm not trying to count it in that matrix because there's a lot more games that really increases the testing surface. I'd rather stick with the commercial titles so at least we have a guaranteed list of games that probably did less weird stuff, because I've already noticed a couple of the homebrew titles do things that are a little weird. But I do remember a couple weeks ago when simulating the block drawing of the VIP, that actually improved compatibility with a bunch of homebrew titles. They were doing these weights on some register changes for like fading in and out the screen, and that just made one of these registers change way faster. So it's like, yeah. Anyway, I'm interested in doing that. It's just not part of my regular testing regime. But since I'm trying to also open up the emulator now at this point, because it's mature enough that I'm ready to handle other people working on it as well. If anyone wants to test any of those, or anyone wants to develop against the emulator and try to find some bugs, on the off chance that you guys have all the hardware to do that, let me know if you find anything. I'd be really interested in fixing some of that, if there's problems. No one says, Jake, you might want to turn on VSync on the screen to 60 hertz and output the stream to 60 FPS. Should improve on the glitching. I believe I'm doing both of those things. I might be outputting 30 hertz. But I'm not really sure if that would cause much of an issue. Actually, I'll double check my settings now just in case anyway. But I'm going to hide my screen really quick because I don't want to flash my stream key. BRB. Yeah, so I'm outputting at 30 FPS. I'm just going to leave it as is for now because I can't switch it midstream. So yeah, sorry again you guys are having issues, but hope it's nothing too serious. But yeah, so the CPU accuracy is definitely getting there. The audio hardware is really close to being done. There's these last two features that I want to look at today. I don't know if we'll get through both of them just because there's a couple details that we might miss, but I do know a lot of cases where they're not working, so I know at least where we need to test. Try later, as long as your stream FPS is an integral multiple divisor of your screen refresh rate, you shouldn't have any issues. Yeah, that seems to be the case. No, and it might also be issues when not using source stream. I can't see any issues myself. Yeah. Trailer also says he hasn't seen any artifacts. That's also good to hear. No one Twitch has a lousy transcoder. Yeah. Happens. But yeah, I mean, we're getting up there in terms of things I know about, at least in terms of accuracy. There's still those couple bugs in like vertical force and some of those. What I actually want to do to try and fix those is I want to go through some of the source for other emulators. In particular, when I suspected it was the floating point stuff, I looked a bit at Minafin, and I noticed that their floating point stuff in particular was really interesting because they're actually doing soft floats. And I think the reason they're doing that is not for accuracy, because I think it's IEEE 754 singles, so it should actually be the same as what we're using here when we use the F32 data type. Minus some rounding things, but we can do those by hand. That's pretty rare where that becomes too different. But I think the reason they're doing that is because they're doing floating point exceptions, and those aren't something that we're handling right now. It doesn't seem like like any of the games actually rely on that behavior. And it's because it's stuff like, oh, we multiplied two floating point numbers and we got reduced precision in the output. Let's raise and interrupt. And I don't think any of the games are really listening for those kind of things. So to my knowledge, that shouldn't actually be that important. I also looked at a little bit at MAME's source. MAME at least has a V810 core. I don't know if they have virtual boy support, but anyway, MAME is even sloppier than we are in a lot of ways. Like in particular with like the floating point conversion functions or instructions. There's a lot of those where it's like, okay, we'll convert from float to int, and then we'll take the flags from that integer result, or the other way, we'll take an int and convert it to a float, and then we'll set the flags based on the result of the conversion, so like the output float of that, and they just like always take the integer results, so it's stuff like that. But I want to just go through all the different instructions and just kind of compare side by side. I did that with the datasheet recently, but there might be some detail that I missed. So if anyone else has an afternoon and just wants some time to kill, doing that should be good. I mean, at least the CPU as it is now is pretty straightforward. Jay Westfall's doing some stuff for accuracy, but I'm pretty sure a fix like this wouldn't actually cause any conflicts because like it would just be a small logic thing, whereas he's doing some more timing related stuff, so I don't think that would really matter. I think that would merge pretty nicely. So that would really help. And then of course the bit string stuff. And then just trying to think of like anything else. After that, we should have pretty good accuracy. Oh yeah, that was the thing that I keep trying to think of that I keep forgetting about. For the website stuff. So I just threw together the server in Node just because I know how to do that. And an advantage of that is that it makes it really easy to extend. And in particular, one of the things that I've been wanting to do is actually have a little blog where I actually blog about all these different little bug fixes I do. Because I have this site called Every Weeks, and in Every Weeks, it's me and a bunch of other guys who basically just, okay, we work on a lot of projects. Let's actually take those, just write about what we did throughout the week. So I'm actually writing a lot of these bug reports up there anyway. And so I think what I'll do is just put up a little blog on the Rustral Boy site where it's just like dedicated to those kind of things. This is inspired by the Dolphin blog. And although, of course, this emulator is a lot smaller, and especially the audience is a lot smaller, it would still be nice to actually archive that kind of information and share that kind of stuff. And when people like Jay Westfall go in and implement a bunch of the CPU stuff, it'd be nice to actually like document that happened and like share a notice about that. Also, if we end up in some kind of more regular release cycle or producing like 1.0 releases and stuff, it'd be nice to share that there. If anyone is interested in working on that, by the way, get in touch, because I'm totally interested in sharing this kind of work. But if no one wants to do it, I'll just probably end up doing it myself. And there was one other thing. Oh yeah, the libretro thing that I mentioned earlier. That would be the biggest like big win in terms of the front end for the emulator. That would be really cool. John Hunter 9 can use the same amount of humor as the Dolphin blog. I haven't noticed that they use that much humor, but maybe that's just because I haven't read enough. But I mean, it'd be as lighthearted, I guess. Like it'd be me writing it, so it's still like my voice. So it wouldn't be too terribly serious. If that's what you mean. Anyway, the big kind of overarching goal to that is that like we're at the point where the emulator really is starting to become quite compatible with a lot of things, quite accurate, at least for our purposes for now. And I'd really like to get people actually using the emulator and actually playing games with it, to kind of take it from that realm of, oh, this is a cool project in Rust, into the realm of, oh, this is a cool project. Oh, hey, it's Rust. You know what I mean? Like that. I want the Rust part to kind of be an afterthought, and I want it to be a good product first. And we're getting really close to getting there. And so, again, I'm really pushing the libretro thing just because that would be a really big win in terms of the actual usability of the emulator. Because otherwise, I mean, we can keep focusing on our own front end and everything, but there's going to be a lot more, like that's a lot longer path. Although I probably will do some quick wins, at least in terms of the debugger. Like the way that the emulator pauses when the debugger is entered is not good right now. It would be nice to integrate something with Rusty Line or something like Rusty Line so that we can actually get like history for that stuff. In particular, what was I thinking of? I tested Rusty Line and I tested it on Windows, and It actually had some problems with MSys, which I use all the time, which is probably fine because like if you wanted to use the emulator or the debugger, just use CMD, and that seemed to work okay. So I got to test it on Mac as well, but that would be really easy to incorporate, and then at least we'd have a really lightweight front end for most of the platforms. Where if you wanted to use like the debugger or something, then it would be super easy to do that. It's still a command line interface for the debugger, but at least you have like copy and paste and stuff, so that's covers most of your use cases there. But yeah, I'm kind of thinking like that could be the primary purpose of that build, and then the libretro build would probably be the primary like thing that people would actually use. Studio C says, I'm going to start a microblog project, but sadly I was not thinking of anything in Node.js. Yeah, I'm open to considering other things as well than Node. It's just that's what I knew how to set up, so I just set it up that way. But again, I'm totally interested if anyone wants to contribute in making that happen. Whatever's easiest for people, so we can figure that out. Even if someone wanted to do something experimental with one of the newer Rust web frameworks, I'd be interested in seeing that happen. But it really doesn't matter to me. I just want it to work. Yeah. So I'm pretty happy generally with that at least. Like even just throwing up that little website really kind of made me feel really good about the project. Just like, yeah, it's an emulator people might actually use. Of course, the UI sucks, so that's a problem. But anyway, back to some of the more emulation-based things. I've just been thinking a lot about this week because I wanted to get a lot of that stuff just like bare bones done enough, and then invite people to contribute. So you see, says, I think nonetheless that depending on the frequency of the posting, it may be easier to generate static web pages automatically out of the Git repo. That's actually exactly what I was thinking, except like at least a framework that I found called Poet would basically take markdown files out of the Git repo and then just serve them. So it would still like not statically generate the actual like pages for the posts, which is fine because it's super lightweight anyway in terms of server work, and it's like it'll also generate like a sitemap.xml and all that, or like RSS feed and everything. Like it would be static enough, and it would be easy to manage without having to do like a front end for editing posts. I don't care about that stuff. I don't mind pushing to a Git repo. Like the site's already there anyway, so like it would feel like doing a static stuff, but without the extra step of actually statically generating things. Daniel Collin, yes. Did I not mention that? Oh man, my bad if I almost forgot that. I'm so sorry. I reached my only Patreon goal that I had, which is really cool. That happened way sooner than I expected. I believe I tweeted about that. I'm just kind of pulling up the page now. So I had one goal set on Patreon, and that was to get to $50 a month. And I said that I would bump up to 2 guaranteed programming streams per week. And I totally did not expect to meet that within like 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks, or however long it took. So that was nuts, guys. We're not 53. Thank you guys so much for that, by the way. That is really, really cool. Dan Collins said, yeah, so what's next? John109 says demos, please. So I will totally do this. I'll probably start either next week or the week after. The only reason it might not be next week is because this all came kind of sudden, and I got to kind of figure out what I want to do for 2 streams a week. So I have to figure out the day that it would be best for me to actually do 2 streams because, yeah, just got to figure that out, and I got to figure out what the content of the other stream will be. So I still want to do the regular Thursday streams every week at the same time slot. And that will probably continue to be the emulator streams. And then I will do another day of streaming, it might be random stuff. It might be demo scene. It might be emulators. I don't know what it's going to be yet. So I set out some time tomorrow and this weekend to actually figure some of that out. But until then, like I could list off a bunch of options, but ultimately I need to decide on something that I can actually do regularly. So I'll figure it out. I'll let you guys know. It'll might be demos, but we'll figure something out. So yeah, thank you guys again so much for that. That was really, really cool. I did not expect that to happen. It was a real surprise. Oh yeah, John Hunter just posted a picture from the Dolphin blog. That's pretty cool. Yeah, I did see some of that. That was pretty great. That's pretty nice. Daniel Collins says also, why are you not at Datastorm? Datastorm. Because it sold out in like 5 minutes, and I'm not really an Amiga guy. Is the short answer. C2C says, I will tell more in the Discord when I start working. It will be fully open source, and I would love you to use it. I just finished a project, and I need more of this drug. Yeah, that could be really cool. I mean, if it's something you're making custom as well, I wouldn't mind having maybe you do the blog or something with the thing. Thing is that web dev generally isn't my thing, so I don't want to spend too much time on it. But I mean, if it works for our use case, I would be more than happy to have you build that for that. So that could be really cool. Yeah, Colin says, well, C64 also, to be honest, is a really nice party regardless, but yeah, it's all that fast. Yeah, it seems like it's a great party. I mean, clearly they keep selling out every year. Or every time they do it, I should say. That's on my list of parties I need to go to. That is on my list. X is on my list. I still have not been to Assembly. There's a few others. Sundown was on my list until it happened the same weekend as Solskogen last year. Bummer. But it happens. All right, I think that's everything. It feels like it's been a really busy week. But, I mean, like throwing up that little website and then also putting out the binary releases was kind of a big deal for me, at least. And it was fairly easy to do. I haven't spammed things as much as I'm probably going to coming up here because of the emulator still lacking some accuracy. But feel free to share it if you guys are interested in wanting people to see it. No reason to keep it under wraps. John 109 says sweep and mod. Yeah, so that's the last two features of the sound chip of the Virtual Boy that we want to implement. So I don't quite understand what these are entirely yet. I know the sweep is for adjusting the frequency of the sound source by like some kind of interval. In particular, it's the fifth voice of all the 6 voices. There's the 5 voices that are basically playing out of the wavetable memory. And the fifth one has a sweep and mod features. So the sweep, I believe, is for making like pitch ups, like pitch slides up and down. And I think the mod is for actually taking values in another table and then modulating the frequency with those. And I don't really know how that's interpreted, but we're going to have to read the docs and figure that out. So I think that'll be cool. So you see, it says he's definitely trying Assembly Summer this year because Assembly Winter starts tomorrow, and I have no ticket. Yeah. Assembly Winter, I don't think has any demo scene related things anyway, as far as I know. I could be very wrong about that, but that's my understanding. So far, I did a couple things. I did one small thing this weekend before I went and debugged that virtual bowling stuff related to the sweep and mod, because I was going to do that this weekend, but then I didn't. And so what I did in particular, so we had these wavetables, the 5 different wavetables that those other voices are using to actually play sound out of. And then there's one more table called the modulation table. Again, I'm not entirely sure how this is used yet. We're going to figure that out. But all I did is I just added this now mod table words, which is the same thing as the wavetable words here. So there's 32 of those. I did the memory mapping for this wavetable. So it's just this memory range. And then I implemented the actually writing to that memory. And that involved like 2 things. Because there was the actual memory mapping itself. And then there's the fact that you're not supposed to write to it while this particular voice is enabled. And that's, I think, all I did. So the next step is actually really straightforward. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take this standard voice that we have for the first 4 voices, and I'm just going to fork that. I'm just going to literally copy and paste the code here. And that's because I don't really know how it works yet. I'd rather just duplicate the code and then see what it looks like, see what we end up needing. I'll call this a sweep mod voice. and then we'll refactor and try to actually get some code share once we know it works. So we'll fork that, and then we'll make the 5th voice in the emulator a sweep mod voice. And that will require us to do that there as well. And that should be it to at least run this. Yeah, Daniel Collins says there's no demo scene related stuff at Assembly Winter. I think it's pure gaming. So that built, it ran. Actually, there's some little melodic like beeps here. Right there. Those actually are not supposed to sound like that. Like, you're not actually supposed to really hear the melody. They're supposed to be all like garbled. And I believe it's the modulation that's doing that. And we'll hear that. There's also one of the tables in this game. I believe it's the alien table. The voice actually sounds like a normal voice, but it's supposed to sound like a weird garbled alien voice. Also, yeah, that takes a minute to get into, so I'll just wait on that. Also, this Tolero Boxer game. This game has a couple drums in the intro. They're supposed to be these big doo-doo-doo-doo kind of toms, but they end up just being like solid pitches. It'll be really obvious when you hear them. It's at the end of this little intro. Actually, I think you can skip the intro and it'll still play it. Right there. Those are supposed to be big drums that like probably use the sweep to actually pitch down. So we have a couple games where we know that these features creep up. We just got to figure out how to work on it. Dana Collins says you need warp mode, hint hint. And my response to that will be pull request welcome. That would be really helpful. Yeah, so we're going to look at the this stuff. Sudoc says, by the way, I just bought anaglyph glasses. Awesome. let me know if the red and cyan is backwards. I don't think it is though, but it might be. Yeah. So as far as I know, this voice will basically act like any other voice, except of the sweep and modulation stuff. Now 5 has, in addition to all the features in channels 1-4, support for frequency sweep and modulation functions. Frequency modifications are made directly to the frequency registers. So I think I have read through this a little bit, and I think so. In particular, these voices all have these frequency registers that specify like a low and high value for a divisor from a 500 kilohertz clock, I believe it was, or 5 megahertz clock. I can't remember. And what we're going to do is we're going to adjust that frequency, but I don't think we adjust the value that's written in those registers. I think those registers, like, I think that latches 2 values. I think it latches 1 value, which is like the actual register store, and I think there's a second internal register that actually stores the actual frequency the voice is playing at in the case of this voice. And I think that's what like the sweep and mod will actually interact with. But let's just read through this and we'll see if that's right. If that is the case, then we'll go ahead and implement that first, because that'll be super easy, and then we can actually work on implementing the different sweep and mod functions. And I'm just gonna, I don't know which one I want to do first. I just want to read through it and see what we get. So in particular, there's this envelope sweep and modulation control. Excuse me. So I think the it says these bits are not used in this case. I believe this register is shared between, the sweep modulation control and then the envelope bits. So if we go ahead and look at this VSU envelope thing here, we'll see that there's bits 1 and 0, which I believe the lower two, excuse me, the lower 2 of these 4 bits is actually used for the envelope. So this will be the same register. We can map those soon as well. And then setting enable sweep modulation to 1 will activate frequency modulation feature of this channel. So I guess if that's not activated, then it will just act like a regular voice. Setting it to 0 will deactivate the feature, and then it will probably. I actually wonder if in that case it will reload the initial frequency value, or if it will just keep playing at the value it was at before. We'll have to figure that out. Move away 00. Make sure to release a disclaimer with your emulator that young children shouldn't use it and it might be dangerous to your eyes. I should put as many of those disclaimers as I can find from the Virtual Boy manual. Because there's a lot of them. When repeat modulation is set to 1, the modulation samples will be read from the modulation table repeatedly. When this bit is 0, the modulation samples will be read once, and the channel will continue with the last read frequency. So I guess there's going to be a repeat there. Function specifies which frequency modification function to use. So it will either be sweep or mod. Interesting. In fact, another thing that we should try is I think actually a good way to go about implementing this is do that second frequency register first, and then we'll do the registers for like these control bits, and then I want to print out all the register writes to these registers just to see. I don't know. I guess we can pick whichever one we implement first based on what we see happens in the registers. So that's the sweep and modulation control. So there's a few bits in there, and then there's another register which I believe only exists for this channel, and that's the sweep and modulation data. So that's the data the features will actually use to operate. So we have a modification base interval, a modification interval. I have no idea what those are, and then the sweep direction, the sweep amount, which is a little more intuitive, I think, but we'll see. The modification base interval specifies the base frequency used by frequency modification functions. So what I'm seeing here is we're probably going to have another couple clock dividers, and then we just select which one of those we use. And when, whichever one we're using actually ticks, that will, we will, I guess, modify the frequency somehow specified by the function stuff. So I'm guessing that'll end up actually being fairly straightforward. Of course, whenever I see these rates, I get kind of iffy, but we'll do some math to make sure that they end up being on integral cycle counts, and I'm sure they will be. So the math will work out pretty cleanly here. Integer value in modification intervals multiplied by the specified modification base interval frequency to resolve the actual interval between frequency modifications. So that just means we're going to have counters counting down these, like dividing the clocks to these values, and then we're going to have another counter whenever that ticks that will divide it further. If modification interval is 0, then frequency modification will not be performed. I'm guessing that it probably will still be performed, but that because this interval is 0. Oh no, wait a minute. Yeah, modification base interval and the modification interval. Okay, so yeah, so this is the multiplier for this basically, except I guess if it's 0, it will not actually ever tick. So we'll have to do that. For either frequency modification function, if the frequency drops below 0 or rises above 2040, sound generation on channel 5 will be stopped. So I guess it'll turn itself off. Interesting enough. So that was, I guess, the modulation, or at least that's the timing for this stuff. I'm going to skip down to this modulation because I think we'll continue talking about that. Or you know what? Actually, no, this I guess applies to both because this is just modifying the function. I keep reading modification as modulation in my head. Also, there's a nice typo there. Yeah. Okay, so when using the sweep function, the frequency of the sound channel 5 is modified over time algorithmically. Sweep direction specifies whether the frequency will change in an upward or downward direction. So 0, it will be down, and 1 will be up. At the interval specified by the modification base interval and modification interval, so when these timers tick, sound 5's frequency registers will be modified by plus or minus the sweep amount, depending on the value of the sweep direction. That seems pretty easy. Especially if these are, like direct values here. Because here we have then 3 bits to actually specify a sweep amount and then which direction it's going. And then those ticks. So that seems pretty easy. In addition to the values in the channel 5 sweep now we're into modulation. In addition to the ones in the sweep modulation data register, sample memory exists for reading modulation data. That's the memory that we already added in this table. Like the PCM waveforms, the modulation samples are accessed as words, and there are 32 of them. That's meant there were 4 bytes apart. Modulation samples have a different binary format, however. Modulation samples are 8 bits and signed 2's complement, I believe. Unlike, so the wavetable memory ended up being a box of U8s. I made the mod table box a big old list of I8s because that actually made more sense for this reason. At the interval specified by the modification base interval and modification interval. Man, this document is really wordy for this part. Sound channel 5's frequency registers will be modified by the next modulation sample according to the setting of repeat modulation. So I guess it'll probably just take the whatever, I think it was like 11-bit frequency or whatever, and it will probably just add this signed 8-bit value whenever the timer ticks. That's probably all that's doing. And then it will disable that functionality after the last one if the repeat isn't set. That's what it say. The modulation samples will be read once, and the channel will continue with the last read frequency. So I wonder if that continues modulating or not. I guess we'll have to figure that out. Modulation table memory can only be written while all sound channels are inactive. I definitely know that ends up being this only seems to apply to channel 5's voice. I think I got that from the newer text scroll. I can't remember, but I remember reading that somewhere. John Hunter 9 says you should put them as like a million message boxes on startup. Just have all these little warnings. As long as we get the icons correct, it sounds great. So actually this seems pretty straightforward, even more straightforward than I thought. So I think what we'll do is we'll add an internal frequency register for this voice. So that'll be real easy. And then we'll just map the different control bits, and I think the logic for this is going to end up being pretty straightforward. Louis00, have fun at the meeting. Sorry, man. Gotta pick a different meeting day. I bet it's totally only up to you. So we can call this the register frequency, and then we can call this frequency low. By the way, someone also mentioned to me the other day that it is actually not conventional Rust to use usize and isize when you don't want to specify the integer type. You should actually just use like U32 or I32. And that was not something I was familiar with. And for convention, I want to kind of stick to what we have, but at some point I might actually just go through and change all this. Or again, if someone else wants to do that, feel free. But that was kind of disappointing because I've been doing that for like all my Rust projects forever now. Grr. But it does make sense. There is some rationale to that. I picked these because it's like, oh, I don't care what size it is. I'll use the machine word. But there are cases where like I32s and U32s are actually going to be a bit faster. And that's what C++ ends up defaulting to, I guess. So there you go. Or at least C++ int. Anyway. So we'll just do these as usizes here. And then when we write the frequency registers here, we'll do that. Cool. And then we'll not use the register here. We'll use the actual frequency there. And I think that is it. I think that's everything for that. So that would be that internal register. Just going to run this again to make sure it builds. Although I'm sure this will work exactly how it did before. Sounds like it. The emulator started off the window. I don't even need to drag it on. Because all we needed to do is hear if that worked. So there's the internal register. Now let's do the different control bits here. In particular, yeah, we just have it whether or not it's enabled and whether or not the repeat is enabled. So that should be really easy to model. In fact, I believe this is also with the envelope, so I'll, yeah, mix it in here. I'll do reg sweep mod enable, and we'll do reg mod repeat. We'll call that. Cool. And then because we have default here, those will just get default values. We don't have to initialize them. Nice. Then we want to actually set these with the envelope bits. I believe it's the envelope control reg that this ends up being with. Let me check the map just in case. Or did we just do envelope control here? I'm going to rename this if that's what this ends up being. 514 and 518. Yeah, this ends up being envelope sweep mod control. Also, there was another one here. Call that the sweep mod data. 51C that was. Yeah, let's just map those. Change a couple of these here. I think that's it for that. And then we'll also do this other reg here. Change the interface here a little bit to be more descript for this particular voice. That's here. And then we'll have this as well. Whoops. Data Colin says, if you want, you can call set position on the mini FB window so you don't need to move it. It's only a problem on the stream, just because I have a 4K screen, so it's not like it's on the wrong monitor or anything. It's just on the left side of the screen on the other 1080p over there. So it's not a problem when I'm deving with it. It's just when I'm on the stream and it doesn't bug me enough. So I'll just probably leave it as is. That is helpful though. Helpful to know. So we'll do. What order of the bits have I been using? Probably just this top-down order. So we'll just set these in the same order. Or, yeah, that'll be fine. It's not gonna matter much. So the sweep and mod is gonna be bit 6. Set that on self here. Yep. Oh yeah, we need to do not equals 0 here. So that should be it for setting that. And I don't think any of these registers have reading anymore. I think I went through and removed all those because some of the documentation I found says that those aren't actually supposed to be read. They're also only supposed to be accessed on byte writes, which I believe right now we're also a little bit more permissive and allow for word writes, but shouldn't really make a difference. And then for the sweep and mod data, we want to add some more of these registers here. Basically copy the name straight out, except the modification interval was not a Boolean. Sweep direction. There we go. Try later. Have to do some stuff now. I'll catch the rest later on YouTube. Next stream will be announced on Twitter. It will be announced on Twitter, and it will be next Thursday, same time as this time. If I end up picking a day that's in the week, and I end up starting to do 2 streams a week next week, which I may not do, then I'll announce it on Twitter. So I guess the answer is yes, but at least there will be same time next week. So now we actually want to parse these here. We'll take the base interval. Try later, see you later. That's kind of fun to say. This is bits 6 through 4. So we'll do think that works. And I need to make this a U size in this case. Or I think I can do that. It was also brought up to me recently. Someone asked why I do this shift and then and, where I could just like and with a specific bit mask. I just find that a bit easier to read. Like this starts at bit 4, this is bit 7, this is bit 3. Using the bit masks that correspond to those bits is also fine. It's not going to make much difference. And we'll take the sweep amount. Now, I do tend to mess up bit shifts and bit masks anyway. So definitely call me out if you see anything that looks wrong. I may be switching back and forth too fast, but I think that looks correct to me. And with that, then we at least have all the registers we need, and then implementing the actual functionality will be the next thing. So we're going to want to actually implement these timers here. Down column says you can use B111 also. Yeah, that's probably better in that case if I'm going to be using that kind of pattern for readability, especially like the hex 7. That's probably going to be better. Yeah, I might go through and change all those at some point. I'm just looking at these timers and thinking like, do I want to do 2 clock dividers, or do I just want to do one that will change this interval? I'll probably just do one that changes its interval. That'll be a little bit easier. That's what I do in the timer right now anyway, which is probably somewhat wrong actually, just because of some drift stuff. Yeah, but this should be okay. I don't expect that to make much difference. So what we want to do is we want to actually set up like actual constants, actual clock tick values for these. In particular, you can see I have these different clock periods for these. I'll put this before the noise clock period just because I know that, yeah, this voice is voice 5 and that was voice 6. I like to keep those kind of things in order. So we have the larger interval and the smaller, yeah, this is actually the larger interval. Let's see. Just kind of thinking. I'm not really sure what to call this constant yet, but Let's call it small interval. Or I'll call it small period and large period. Now, because this should be about this interval, we should just be able to divide the 20 megahertz clock by that. And we should get a decent value. 20 megahertz divided by 1041.6. And this should, here's what I'm going to do. Since we got kind of a weird number, let's see what happens if we just assume it's 19,200. We'll take 19,200. That's how many clocks it would be. It would be times 50 nanoseconds. And that gets us relatively close. If we take that, actually, let's do this. Let's do it the other way. So this would have gotten us 1,041 and 2/3, which is 1,041.6 here. So I think that's about right. If we take that. Also note that these do say hertz, yeah, because that's quite a lot of these for one of these timers we've seen. But anyway, I think that kind of rounding is quite appropriate here. These are usually going to be pretty clean numbers. So I think that's okay. Now, I have seen cases where it looks like the datasheet would have rounded that up to 0.7. But I think this is going to be fine, at least to start with. And then we'll do this basically the same thing here, 130.2 hertz. I'm expecting that to also be round. Divided by 130.2. And again, we get something pretty close. 153,609.8. So if we assume that's 153,610, we should get about 130.2. Yeah, that would be the larger period. This is the kind of thing that I would also want to test with the real hardware. Just like once we get it working, I'll do some test recordings later and actually compare them, but they should be pretty correct, I'm guessing. It still is kind of weird numbers, but it's round numbers, and that instills confidence in my head at least. Okay, so these are going to be the different periods, and then we're going to just add some counter for doing that. So I think in the timer I had the, was it tick counter here? Or did I call those clock counters? What did I use here? I want to use similar naming convention for these kind of things. Here's this frequency counter. The noise is also a frequency counter in that case. Okay, then we'll just call it something counter. So these have a frequency counter. And then we're also going to add, yeah, because the frequency counter is used to change the actual sample based on the frequency. And then we'll have and then that'll change the phase. So I'll keep grouping those together, and then we'll do a mod counter. Actually, we'll do a sweep mod counter. A little bit more verbose, but I think that's fine. Yeah, and that should be basically it. I'm going to assume that that's basically never reset, for now at least. Although, okay, we're actually going to need two of these, because one of these will be the internal counter every time one of these clock divider things ticks, and the other one will count up to that interval where it will tick. So that's where I'll just call one of them clock counter and the other one counter. maybe a bit too similar names, but I use the same scheme elsewhere. So it should be okay. In fact, I'll double check with that. But I'm pretty sure I use that elsewhere. Yeah, like here for the display frame quarters. I count up the different quarters of the display frames in the VIP, and then I use a clock counter to actually count the clocks for when I should do that. So I think that makes sense. So what we're going to do then is... Okay, so here we got a frequency clock here. These different callbacks. I think I'm not doing per voice clock ticks right now. Yeah, that's right. Oh, that's where these clock counters went. That's why I don't have to see those in the voices, because I moved them all out here. Moved basically all the clock generation out into, all the clock dividing out into the VSU, which I guess hardware-wise, that's where this would be as well. But since it only pertains to that voice, I want to keep it there. And so in that case, we need to, for every clock tick, also do those counters. Yeah, see, here's all the different counters, which I like the organization for that. So I think that's quite all right. Because the envelope has their own clock, the frequencies have their own clock, and then I'll stick it here. Although I did move the noise clock counter here, so maybe I'll move that clock counter, the sweep and mod clock counter here as well, just because of that. I think I'll do that actually, because if I'm doing that for the noise clock, I might as well. It's not going to make much difference. And then it'll at least be a little more consistent with what we already have. So let's do that. Stick it there. Then we have the same pattern, which is pretty nice. This is the... We have to figure out the period based on one of these registers. That kind of sucks that we have to read it out of the voice, but we do have access to that here. So I'll do that for now at least. This is going to be a match. That's what I meant to type there. In this case, or it's going to be Boolean, so we can just do ifs. Was it the sweep mod? It was the base interval, wasn't it? Yeah. Actually, to keep them in the same order, I am actually going to do match here. Right, because we'll get the small period and the large period. So it looked like that. That's not too bad at all. Except it's not going to call the noise clock. Unique passive, how's it going? This will be the sweep mod clock. And I like when the voices have this interface because it really maps well to how I think of the hardware at least. Also, we need to have that here. That's fine. We'll just stick that in there on the way up. This is because these couldn't be default. So that's why this whole thing is implemented here, even though it just uses defaults for all the voices. So they had the sweep mod clock I think will be after the frequency clock. RT Prince says, seems like true would be clearer than blank there. Yeah, probably. I'm going to change that really quick. That should also be voice 5. Cool. Okay. Yeah, so this is going to be pretty simple. The first thing we're going to do is this little counter again. This is going to be if it's greater than or equal to the interval. We're going to reset the counter, and then we should have, yeah, the same clock. That should cover our dividing here and here. Except if the mod interval is 0. Done. Technically, I guess this stuff would still tick. This is fine. I mean, the counter would just end up staying at 0 anyway, so I like that. This we'll worry about later. In fact, it's unsigned, so we'll do some wrapping add and wrapping sub when we do the frequency adjustment, and then if it gets after this, we'll disable the voice. That's probably how we'll do that. Actually, we can basically do that now. So at this point, this will adjust. At this point, actually, the stuff will be adjusted, and then here's where we would want to do that check. So this is actually pretty easy because we can basically just say if it's drops below 0, rises above 240 or 2040. Since this is unsigned, all we actually have to do is check against 2040. So self dot I guess it's just this value. It may be 2048 minus that, but I don't think it will be. I think it's going to be this. And this is the kind of thing that I might try to do code share here where we actually get the frequency, but I think this is going to be fine. Oh, that's greater than 2040, right? Yeah. And I think I stuffed the control stuff in a play control. I think that's all I need to do there. Just with the way this is implemented. So I think that's probably fine. Okay, so this is where things get more fun. Man, I think this is actually going to be really straightforward, you guys, which is really cool. I like when the hardware is really straightforward like that. Actually, doing this sound chip in particular has really made me want to get my FPGAs back up and running, and then modeling this same thing. RT Prince, is there any possibility that wrapping will cause the value to land in the range 0 to 2040 again? Yes. I definitely think so, actually. That's a good point. Yeah, because it will adjust these values, won't it? You know what I think we might do? Let's do this. Were these U8s? Oh, I just made them U sizes. That's probably fine. Yeah, the full thing in the 07. Let's do that, because then we'll have the frequency. We'll just adjust it as like a U size, which will make the adjustment more convenient anyway, instead of operating on both of these registers. And then, yeah, this should work. And I bet it wouldn't actually write that back. Again, this is an internal frequency register anyway, so it's probably going to be fine. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if starting the voice would also reset the internal frequency register. But those are details that aren't laid out for us yet, so we got to implement what we know and then see how wrong it is. But I think that should cover that, and then also make this easy. And I actually just kind of want to implement this straight, like just reading this down linearly instead of, is that Grominaut? Thanks for the follow. So again, by the way, if that's pretty loud, just consequence of my system audio. Yeah, but I think I am just going to implement this linearly instead of actually printing the register values, unless it kind of sounds wrong, just because that'll be a shorter path. Maybe less fun, but we'll see. When using the sweep function, the frequency of the sound, yeah, we actually want to check the function first. Did I not map that? I don't think I mapped that. No, I didn't. So Hunter9 says, well, you hear it. Yeah, that is why I have that on there. And normally I don't use my system audio, so. We could also use an enum for, whoops, don't need the comma there. An enum for these different values here, which eventually I'd probably like to do, but this is okay for now. We can change that later. There's me forgetting some more syntax. Okay, so for sweep, using the sweep function, the frequency of sound channel 5 is modified over time algorithmically. Sweep direction specifies whether the frequency will change upward or downward direction. At the interval specified by these, sound channel 5's frequency registers will be modified by plus or minus sweep amount depending on the value of the sweep direction. So this will be real easy. All I'm doing is just doing wrapping arithmetic here, either adding or subtracting that amount. Since all of this code happens at the right clock rate, or should happen at the right clock rate, that should be just fine. And then that will set this, and then we'll take care of the wrapping here. So that should be good. And that looks to be it, which is rad. Let's just do the modulation while we're at it. So the modulation, by the way, we need a particular phase for this, just like we do with the phase here for the frequency clock. So I'm just going to model that the same way. We'll actually do mod phase, because this is particular to the modulation. And we basically just do this after reading it, I believe. Do that. So all this phase is actually doing here is it's just a basically a pointer into these 32 word tables, and it should just be increased every interval here. Okay, by the way, No, we actually don't have to sign extend this because we'll just sign extend the value that we adjust with from this table here. That should be okay in terms of the arithmetic that we want. Just do wrapping add with a sign extended value. Just trying to think of how we'll handle the sign here, but that'll be really easy. The interval specified by these intervals, sound channel 5's frequency registers, will be modified by the next modulation sample according to the setting of repeat modulation. Yeah, so we need to do the repeat, which right now is handled by this. I'll just add a little note here. I think I have a really easy way to handle that, actually. But first we'll do this. How do we do the lookup? It's just this. Yeah, okay, we need also, by the way. This was the, because we took in the wave tables here. We need the mod table. Oops. Again, just forgetting syntax. Just take a little slice. And then we'll look that up in the mod table for the actual value. That's it. And this should sign extend properly because this will be an unsigned value, and then this is taking the I8 and then converting it to the unsigned value, which should sign extend properly. That's it for the actual modulation, and then we'll adjust the phase. And we'll handle the repeat while we adjust the phase. So we can basically just do this. There's a couple things, actually, because I'm guessing this phase will be reset on a certain condition first. So usually this resets the phase here when the play control is enabled. So like when the voice starts making sound. And I'm guessing we'll want to reset the modulation phase there as well. That'll be cool. And then, so all we need to do then should be for this. Is we'll do this. Or, yeah. Check this out. So if the repeat, if we do have repeat, and we're at the last one here, and then I guess we still need to do this here. Why didn't it like this? That should still just be another constant, right? Some reason it didn't seem to like that. That's weird. Let's just see if that was the issue. Bit annoying sometimes when that kind of thing happens, but it happens. Great. I think that about does it. So let's just try running that and see what happens. Hopefully good things. Oh, we forgot to add the mod table to the sweep mod clock thing there, which is just fine. All we should need to do there is that. I think we got the type wrong up here. the way, am I dereferencing that the same way in the other ones when I'm doing the output for the other ones? Doesn't look like oh, you know what? It's probably just this. And then it doesn't like, this will probably deref properly if we have the right types. I'll just check that just to be sure. But I think, yeah, that should make it coerce correctly. Nicon says the matching in Rust is a bit too strict when it comes to things like this. I agree. That case should have worked. No reason why it couldn't have. I think that was just, yeah. That was something the parser should have handled. Notice that little OK sound was different, so that's interesting. Although I'm not sure if it was correct. Need to test against the hardware. Left and right there, you can kind of hear drums. Okay, so that wasn't correct. But we're off to a good start. So that's pretty cool. There again, not correct. I just want to play a couple more of these just to see what we get. I think there's a kick drum in this song that I hadn't noticed before. So you can kind of hear a little bit of sweep there. I've heard these songs a lot of times, so I know. Cat should be the same. So where I actually expect to see these, or see these features take effect here, there'll be these little explosions in this little intro here. And those should actually sound like explosions. Kinda do. I'm just letting it play through because I don't know what else to expect yet. So I just want to see if there's anything else that I noticed that's different. This game's super fun, by the way. Well, now it actually sounds like he's bouncing. I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like all the stuff that's doing these sweep and mod stuff is just like way too low pitched. So I'm going to look for issues there first. Like, did we set the wrong ones here? Now this looks correct here. This should also be basically correct. Oh, here we go. That might just fix it all. Typo. Let's see. I don't hear that kick drum thing anymore, but it might not have been kick drum. Could have been something else. Just kind of sounded like a kick drum last time, which could be wrong. That's wrong. That's basically what it sounds like when the sweep and mod isn't working. So I want to hear what those Tolero Boxer drums sounded like. I also want to hear the intro of Galactic Pinball again. Hey, that actually swept. That's kind of cool. Seriously, this poor Chalvo. It's actually one of the really funny things in that game is that you get a power up, and I think it's called Super Chavo, and you just get huge, and he's got like this pudgy looking face that's just adorable. I recommend you guys try playing that game. There's a ROM available at Planet VB. Recommend you guys play that game, and I also recommend which emulator you use. That's one of the F games. Minus the sound stuff, I guess, but that applies to basically everything, so I just wanted to not reflect that there. Anyway, so from those drums we heard that it actually swept. I want to, again, hear the thing from Galactic Pinball as well, which might be a different thing. Ooh, we're here. Doo! I think that's wrong, but interesting to hear. They sound like little water drops. Might be a bit quiet. Oh, that's funny.
Welcome to Space World. Let's go.
Yeah. Anyway, it's not quite correct, but it is getting there. So I wonder... It's possible we got the rates wrong. It's also possible, because it sounds like the sweeps just aren't happening fast enough. So it's possible that we got the rates wrong. It's also possible that we got the adjustment values wrong. I'm not really sure which it's going to be. So we just got to dig around, I guess. Because my first guess is bit masks, because I mess those up all the time. So I want to look at these. The base interval is bit 7. Looking good. The modification interval is bits 4, 5, and 6. So we shift right 4 and 7. That looks pretty good. The sweep direction is bit 3. And then the sweep amount, bits 0 and 2. That looks correct. Double check on this stuff as well. Bit 6 was enabled disable. Ah, here we go. First of all, is the repeat one, right? Oh no, I did do that here. Wait a minute. I didn't do the function. I just didn't implement that. And that was bit 4. I'll double check these other ones while I'm at it as well. 6 was enable, 5 is repeat, and then 4 is function. That'll probably help. That means we were never actually getting the modulation. Okay, this is interesting. I know it's really quiet, but I don't want to turn it up because we're gonna turn it back right after this. The sounds sound like what it sounds like in mid-Nothing, but not what it sounds like on the hardware. So I think we're getting closer, but I don't think that's it. Actually, we'll do Tiller Box here. Oh, this is exciting. These are the last couple of features, by the way, for the audio hardware. Still doesn't sound quite right to me. Let's watch this adorable cutscene again. Wrong. Now I'm just watching this. Seriously, Chalmers Planet every time wrecked. Capital R. Just want to make sure all these little bit masks and everything is correct. Challenger 9 must be getting annoyed by now. Or he's just totally used to it. I still think all this looks correct. But it's quite possible that this is not how it gets adjusted. I don't like to use the newer text scroll when doing stuff on the stream, but I might actually pull it up now because it probably has this information. I know that Guy Perfect did a lot of work with actually reverse engineering the sound chip, so I know that a lot of that stuff is probably in there. Slyrus Gaming, did you miss C++? No. Generally. I generally have a better time when I'm coding Rust than C++, but that's just me. I do have like my demo tool project, for example, is actually both, and it work. I'm doing mostly C#, but I still have some C and C++ projects, but tend to reach for Rust these days. Anyway, I'm gonna pull up that little text scroll real quick. Now, this is an unfinished document, so I'm going to try not to show too much of it. I don't think Guy Perfect would appreciate that, but I don't think he'll mind us using the sound information. I don't think he'll mind. Oops. So here we have basically all the same information. Tail calling us secret docs. This is one of a couple secret docs for this system. That if you talk to the right people, you look in the right places, you'll find them. But I'm not about to take part in distribution. Yeah, this stuff we all know. little bit of information about the analog stuff, which is really cool. Play control should basically be the same stuff. Sweep and modulation. Here's the modulation data. Should be fine there. Modulation memory can only be written while sound 5 is inactive. There you go. That's where I got that information I mentioned earlier. Channel 5 envelope sweep modulation control. Bit 7 not used. Yeah, these look the same here. Yeah, we also have the same enable and disable. By the way, are we checking that? I don't think we ever checked that. That might help. Probably doesn't help the cases where it still is wrong, though, but that should be correct, is that we shouldn't actually do anything when the thing was disabled. Did I really never do that? Yeah. I wrote the code. I'm pretty sure that that's something I would have done. I know me too well to put that past me. Repeat modulation specifies... Yep, that should be fine as well. These intervals, I believe, are the same. I'm guessing all of this information is basically going to be the same. Here, though, you'll notice they called it sweep shift amount. So I wonder if the adjustment's actually different. And I can also tell you from another document that I've seen, I think it probably is. Let's just rename this to shift amount. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay, here we go. Sweep shift amount specifies the number of bits to right shift the current frequency value during sweep calculations to produce a frequency modification value. So I guess it takes the current frequency value. What is that here? VSU sound channels maintain 2 pairs of frequency values internally. The most recent value is written to the frequency registry below and the current frequency value. So if this says current frequency, I'm guessing that is the frequency that we modeled here earlier. TJ, how's it going? Good to see you, man. No worries. You'll enjoy it later, I think. Yeah, so I think what'll happen is this will shift that current frequency value to the right some number of bits, which then I guess it would make sense that this value is so small. And then it still probably adjusts the current frequency value based on that sweep value that we got from shifting. Yeah, sweep direction specifies how to apply shifted sweep values to the current frequency value. We'll subtract it or we'll add it. So let's do that first. Should be basically that. And while we're at it, we'll go ahead and read through this as well. For either frequency modification function, the following procedure takes place for each frequency modification frame as specified by the base interval, which is exactly what we're working with there. New frequency value is calculated, but is not yet applied. Okay, that's also matches what we're doing. That's pretty cool. Sweep only. If the new value is greater than 2047, the channel is immediately stopped. Okay, so I guess that doesn't happen for modulation. Interesting. I'll do this, as that's a cleaner number. So if Modification interval. So I'm saying it will calculate like the next value, but it doesn't seem like that next value will actually be latched later, because sound will be generated for the modification interval. What that says to me is that we need these next values here. What we'll do here, the barber shopper. Thanks for the follow, man. Man or woman, or something in between. We'll do this, and then we'll do this. We'll latch these values here. Barber shopper has not seen much rust. Well, you'll see a lot of it here. See a lot of it here. And on my YouTube. So I think, yeah, so this will latch the new values, and then we'll calculate the next values based on these latched values, which I think is going to be correct. That would make sense to me. But then here we want to adjust the next ones. I'm going to also not do this if the sound is disabled for the whole voice. And we're going to do this. Yeah, because then only in the sweep if the value is greater than 2047, this channel is immediately stopped. Then we'll get the delay latch from like this. If frequency modification isn't enabled, the current frequency value is replaced by the previous calculated new frequency value, which is what we'll get again. Yeah, these last 2 points we'll get by that like latching later thing that we did. When play control is written, the current frequency modification frame is reset. So that means these counters are reset. The most recent current frequency value will be played for one frame prior to applying the first frequency modification, which may result in briefly generating sound undesired frequency. I think that's okay. I think we basically already got that there. When sweep modulation data is written and the modification interval changes, the remaining duration of the current frequency modification time frame will only change if the new interval hasn't yet been processed. If it hasn't, the frame will continue through the remainder of the previous interval, and the next frame will last for the new interval. I think that means that the interval also has kind of that latching, but I'm guessing this isn't going to be very important here, so we'll skip that for now. When using the sweep function, the frequency of sound is modified for each one of these. The frequency modification value is calculated by shifting the current frequency value right by the number of bits specified in the sweep. Oh no, we just did the sweep. That's exactly what we just did. This is interesting. If the calculated new frequency is this, a bug in the hardware implementation of the sweep function will allow this to occur even if the sweep function is disabled. So if either one of these is 0, it can still stop here. Then let's do this for that. I guess it would happen with this counter here. Here's what we can do for that. Just trying to think. So we're going to calculate the new frequency. I guess we can always do this assignment here. That should still make sense. This is actually why I wanted to do that. So we'll get this. Basically move that check there. That seems correct to me. May not be, but I think that's okay. Since automatic channel shutoff occurs before generating audio during a frequency modification frame, the highest valid frequency value will not be played, which, yep, that sounds like what we got. When using modulation function, this is modified by reading channel values for each frequency modification frame. The values read from modulation data are added to the most recent values written to the frequency registers. Okay, so that's different. When play control is written, the position within modulation memory will be reset to the first value. So I think we already did the play control where we reset the phase here. That's when it's enabled or when it's written. I choose to do that when it's written and it was enabled, which is fine. Like we'll get the same results either way because we'll have to write that value to enable it again to hear any sound. So if it were disabled, it wouldn't really matter what that phase was at all. So I think that's okay. But this was interesting because this was added to the most recent values written to the frequency registers, which is not the current frequency. That's the register frequency is what we're actually after there. So in the case here, it's not frequency.wrapping add here. It's actually, we'll take the same thing here, but we'll do it from the registers. Okay, I didn't actually need the other parens there. Actually, let's separate this. We'll do that, actually, with the register frequency. It looks like this wraps around as well, and so we can do a bit mask there. Unreleased says, why do you match false and true instead of if else? Just I found that a bit easier to read in that case. I usually don't do that. It's just in this case, like we're kind of matching on a register value, and I just found that a bit easier to read. It's probably something I'll replace by an enum later anyway. But we'll see. I might get lazy and not do that. So we want that mask, I believe. Let's just give that a shot. I haven't heard anything surprising yet, which is a good sign. Noctium, no problem. That at least sounded a lot more like explosions. This is a game I've actually not played on the hardware, so I don't actually know if that was correct. But I think the other stuff will be pretty obvious to me. Although I do want to hear the sound he makes when he hits the ground, just to hear it. Oh, it's just a regular bounce sound like we had before. That's fine. Okay, that's not correct. It's better, but it's not correct. Just the modulation on the one of the background sounds. I know it's probably hard for you guys to hear that on that game, but I know that's not correct. Better though.
Welcome to space.
I'm curious what this alien thing sounds like as well now. Yeah, it still sounded too human. A couple drum sounds in here might be better now. Sound a lot better. That sounded really nice. If that exactly matches the hardware, I'm not really sure, and I have to check it against a recording. But that sounded good. I did not want to go in the menu. Get out of there. Let's run it again. So you see, I like the spatial feeling in the intro of that game. This game is definitely one of the better Virtual Boy games generally. Like it plays on the 3D effect nice, and I love like the panning and stuff in the audio. It's pretty cool. It sounds to me like we may have gotten the sweep right now, but I don't think the modulation is correct. I wonder what another game where I noticed this was. I mean, those were the main ones. I think this game had some though. I might have to win a match to hear it though. But this game's kind of fun. This was one of the games that was just like super compatible from the get-go. I'm literally just gonna play a match of this to see if it's correct. Noctium, is there a way to check the audio automatically? I guess if I like figured out if I did a bunch of hardware recordings, could probably do some automated testing based on those. Just by checking the wave output of the emulator against those recordings. Be pretty tedious to set up though. Yeah, so you see that's basically the same thing I'm thinking. But I think it could be done. I have a feeling though that it will either, like when it works, it'll be so obviously correct. And I don't think we'll break it anytime soon, so. Perhaps not the most valuable exercise, but I do think it's possible. This is a lot slower than I usually win on this game, but actually not that bad. Minute 5 is not too bad. And he'll die here. There we go. And that doo-doo-doo-doo-doo when he hits the ground. That's what I was actually waiting for. And that actually sounded a lot better than it did before, at least. So that's cool. So I do think we got the sweep here. I don't think we got the mod. Don't think we got that correct. First of all, I just want to see if I had that bit mask right for the end here. I don't think that's what's going to be the problem, to be honest, but you never know. I'm just lazy sometimes checking here. 2048, 800 hex, so 7FF is exactly the mask we wanted. So that's correct. Added to the most recent values written to the frequency registers. And the lowest 11 bits of the result are used as the current frequency value, which is what we get there. Out of range values wrap around. Yeah, Colin, you should install console calc on Windows as well. I didn't actually realize it was also for Windows, but that was a pretty cool tool. I wonder if we misinterpreted this and it was actually supposed to be the normal frequency. Let's just try doing that and seeing what happens. I believe this right back is correct. That looks correct to me. This should all be fine. Actually, this will just work without that, by the way, because of the wrapping. I'd rather do that than check the state again. Yeah. Shouldn't affect any of the tests we have here to change that value. That's different and also wrong. Yeah, that's also quite wrong, but interestingly different. I'll set this back and just see what this sounded like to me. I'll turn this up as well if I just keep testing this game. Let me know if that's too loud. Hear that melodic part? It's supposed to sound like really modulated. This part's just really quiet in the game, unfortunately. Interesting. So 109 says really quiet. Yeah, unfortunately. Guess that's just how it is. I mean, I could hack the volume in the emulator, but I wonder why this isn't behaving so nice. I wonder if maybe the interval was incorrect still. So 109 says intro's a lot quieter than game. Yeah, that's just how it is. So you see, every time I see somebody emulating hardware, I realize that when my university teachers used to say that documentation is important when developing software and hardware, they were not kidding, shitting, probably, you said? Not sure. Got cut off. Thresher HT, how's it going, man? I'm doing pretty good. Looks like we're almost done with the last bits of the audio hardware, so naturally I'm fairly excited about that. I want to check these intervals again, just to be sure. Modification base interval, is that what we're checking here? We had the small period and the large period. had the modification interval. So you see, I just wanted to say that we're not joking. Yeah, that makes sense. Gotta implement things to spec. Yeah, so the false is going to be the small period and true is going to be the large period. Just double check this math just in case. Yeah, we did that 19200, I guess. John 109 cough timer cough. So this is each imprecision of the docs costs a lot of time until you figure it out. Yeah, definitely. 656. Nintendo might have the docs, but they're not known for sharing much, assuming they didn't burn everything to do with the VB. Nice. This is 153. 610 is what I believe we did there. This should still all basically line up. So you see the docs are next to those of the GB Micro. Or maybe Gunpei took them with him. And they're next to the WonderSwan docs. Which that seems like a interesting system to me for some reason, is a WonderSwan. I think Titan did a WonderSwan demo, which is pretty cool. Hunter Knight, it's an interesting name. Yeah, it really sounds like the sweep is more or less correct. I need to do a hardware recording and to really verify, but I think that's correct. But that mod is just not acting like we expect. You know what? I think I have a recording of this actually. Hold up. I think I might have a recording of this. Because when I was doing all the timer testing, I think I have a recording from there. It's just whether or not I hit record early enough is actually the question there. I don't even like looking at these anymore. So this, hold up. Just gonna turn my audio input off for Ableton, so we don't get feedback or something. I do have it. Hear how that's supposed to sound? Still not that much. I wonder if I have more than just what's here, though. This is the same. Oops. This is the same file, so I can just drag this out. Yeah, that's definitely wrong. Oops, I skipped it. Didn't wait long enough. Yeah, Colin says, is mod table correct? I'll check that next. You know what? It sounds like the repeat's not correct. It sounds like it just modulates the first frame and then just stops. Let's see if I like hard disable the repeat and just see what happens. Because it sounds like those sounds have like a crunchy beginning, and then they just like sound like normal sounds after. So I'm wondering if we just do this, see if that sounds more or less correct. Oh yeah, I didn't calculate the max mod phase there. Copy it. Susie says, I wonder if you can do a binary diff on both WAV files. If you could do them, yeah, you'd have to do like the cutting and stuff. Oh, this sounds way better. You'd have to cut them right. Oh, actually, hold on. Guys, that sounds super correct. Yeah, you'd have to cut them correctly. Oh, that sounds so good. You'd have to cut them correctly, and also you'd have to like record everything from the hardware at a high enough sample rate that you would actually be able to get all the sample transitions correctly. And probably same with the emulator output. And then you would also have to account for some margin of error, but you could get like ballpark correct, I think. I think it could be useful, but you'd have to do, I don't know if like bit comparing the WAV files would be correct. I think some kind of FFT analysis would be correct or something. But that totally sounded right to me. So it seemed like oh, hey, guys. If repeat is true, then we need to repeat. So there we go. If we're not repeating and we're at the max mod phase, we want to hold that value. Otherwise, we want to move and repeat. That should fix it. Oh, that sounds so correct. Sorry, I'm just listening and being excited. And trying to be quiet because I know it's going to be louder for you guys. Just to be sure, I'll go ahead and open bound high again. But this means that our audio emulation is better than Midnafin's already. And that's cool. It also means that it's basically done, which is really cool. Andre, I keep thinking my phone's ringing. Yeah, so you see, I think definitely, like especially to analyze the transitions between samples, I think that could really help. Could definitely be a good test. Would be really tedious to set up though, so I probably won't do it. But it could be an interesting experiment. Definitely something to keep in mind if we hammer down on accuracy even more in the future. But you'd have to work really hard to like detect those changes. Like the alignment, I think would be hard. Yeah, it could definitely be worthwhile. Oh, this game's adorable. Come on. Come on, there we go. But guys, I think we got this. I'm just gonna listen to that intro on Galactic Pinball again. Even though it's so quiet. Sorry if that's just like super awkward on the stream, but that just makes me really excited that that's correct. At least it definitely sounds correct. Oh, that's nice. Sorry, that's probably loud. Ah, 656 says, what about the alien voice too? Good call. Good call. Gotta test that as well. It'll still be the wrong pitch. Because of this bug with the timer. Or what the CPU accuracy, I suspect. But it should sound garbly. It didn't sound as garbled as I expect, but that might be due to the rate. You know, I'm actually going to hack the timer just to see. Because we know that we got sample playback somewhat correct with like a hacky value here. So just to test this, I think that's actually fair to do. Implete, did you try to play games with anaglyph glasses on? No. I actually don't have any anaglyph glasses. Need to get some though. There we go. That didn't sound right. Why didn't that sound right? Seriously, I'm fascinated by the concept of playing pinball on space without a table. Was it Alien that had the weird sample? I'll have to add a reminder for me to check that against the hardware. Maybe I was wrong about that one being the one that was garbly. Did I even test that actually? Maybe I got that idea from somewhere else. Oh, it's the UFO one. Sorry, it's definitely the wrong table.
UFO.
Or maybe not. Hold up. Where did I hear that? Where did I hear that? I'm just trying to think of if there's a way for me to actually hear this on the stream. I could try if you guys don't mind me almost accidentally blowing your ears out to get at least one sound channel from the hardware. Susie says the anaglyph glasses are usually less than €5, shipping included on Amazon. If you're in Finland, shipping is more expensive than the glasses. Yeah, I bet it would be for Norway as well. Which is where I'm at these days. Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna record this with the hardware. 1 second. I'll be right back. Oh, hold on. I forgot to plug something in. Hold on. Okay, I'm back, and I have the system here running now. And I hooked up so the left channel is my voice mic, and the right channel is hooked up to the thing. I'm going to slowly adjust the volume. This might be really loud, and I'm sorry if it is. Ah, you know what? That won't work because of my OBS settings. Because I have everything recording in mono. Let's do this. Let's see if I can change these on the fly. This is kind of stupid, but that I'm doing this, but I just want to try. Have you guys listen to what the real hardware sounds like. And I really want to know if this is wrong. Because we're so close. We are so close. Okay, so I need to... Hopefully this doesn't crash anything. Because I need to change my mic settings to 2-channel. I'm getting a warning that said it might crash this other application. I actually really don't want to do that because I'm recording. It's so risky, guys. It's so risky. But it's so close. Oh, I do not want to click that button. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to my BRB screen. And I'm going to pause the recording just in case. Well, no, because I have to splice them together. Ugh. You know, I think, honestly, I'll just have to check this later, unfortunately. Here's what I think I'll do, actually. I think what I'll do is I'll cut off the stream for now. It's getting kind of late anyway. And then what I'll do is I'll set all this up, and if you guys want to stick around, I'll do a quick test. Just with these setting changes. I just don't want to mess up the recording for YouTube. RT Prince says the Patreon link in the middle column is actually to Twitch. Oh, in my on the Twitch channel? I totally could see how I might have messed that up. I can fix that really quick. But I think that's what I'll do is I'll cut off the stream, and then if you guys want to stick around, I'll just do a quick thing. I'll fix this link first. Oh, with the FAQ link, isn't it? Yeah, the FAQ link has that wrong. I'll fix that really quick here. Nice catch, by the way. Thanks. Just gonna fix this link really quick. Take a look at my Patreon, which is the same Twitch that you're reading this on. Good job, Jake. Don Hunter, see ya. Dana Collin, thanks for stream. You're welcome. Thank you for watching just about every week. Really appreciate that. I say just about just because I can't remember a week that you were missing, but there probably was one. Now my FAQ link should be fixed, but might have to refresh to see that. So you see, no problem. Again, thanks for joining. Hunter, you know what? I'll stay. Cool. Sounds good. It'll only take like 2 seconds for me to set that up. I just don't want to break the recording, so I will literally be right back to set that up. But anyway, for the recording's sake, thanks again, guys, for watching, and I will see you next time.